From the moment my sister Emma was born, my life changed forever. I was 6 years old, thrilled to finally be a big sister, but that excitement quickly faded. The transition was gradual, but the effects were undeniable. Suddenly, I found myself moved to the basement so Emma could be closer to my parents. The basement was cold and isolated, far from the warmth I had known. I missed being part of the family, and the growing distance between us hurt more than I could express. Nights spent in that dark, lonely basement felt endless. I could hear the laughter of my family upstairs, but it seemed like I was no longer a part of it. It was as if I had become invisible, an afterthought in my own home. The loss of my toys to Emma added another layer of pain. She didn't mean to break them, but it happened constantly. When I tried to talk to my parents about it, hoping for understanding, all I got was, "She's younger. She doesn't understand. You're the big sister, you should be more patient." It felt so unfair. Those toys were my refuge, and watching them get destroyed without anyone seeming to care only deepened my sense of being overlooked. The tipping point came with the MacBook incident. I had worked hard for that laptop. It was a reward for my good grades from school. But one day, it was destroyed. My school was upset with me for being careless, and my parents, instead of sympathizing with me, blamed me for it too. I was furious, hurt, and mostly, I felt completely alone. It wasn't just a laptop. It was the last straw. It wasn't just about feeling unsupported. It was about realizing that my life, my needs, and my aspirations came second to Emma's. Despite the overwhelming sense of injustice, I kept going, doing what I had to do, supporting Emma whenever she needed it. But somewhere deep inside, a part of me longed for a break. I loved my sister, but I wanted to be more than just a caregiver. Every time Emma needed something, my life came to a screeching halt. I couldn't remember the last time I hung out with friends without worrying I'd get a call from home needing me to rush back. Finally, I decided to take a day for myself. I made plans to see the new Spider-Man movie with my friend Jake, something I hadn't done in what felt like ages. It was a small decision, but it meant so much. For once, I wouldn't be on call 24/7. I turned off my phone and allowed myself to enjoy the movie. It felt like a victory, something just for me. But when I left the theater and turned my phone back on, the reality hit me like a freight train. Missed calls, messages, and an incoming text from my mom. "Where have you been? We needed you an hour ago." My stomach sank. I immediately called home, and when my mom answered, her fury was palpable. "We rely on you, and you just decide to disappear to watch a movie? How could you be so irresponsible?" My heart shattered. I had spent the whole evening finally trying to enjoy myself, only to be met with anger. My parents were furious, and it wasn't just about a movie. It was about the unspoken truth that my life had to revolve around Emma's needs. "Your responsibilities here are more important than some movie," my mom added, final and cutting. I was grounded, punished for wanting to live a normal life. That night, alone in my room, it finally hit me. This wasn't about the movie. It was about how I was being trapped in a role I never asked for. Yes, Emma needed me, but when would I get a chance to live my own life? Being 18 and never allowed to make decisions for myself, always having to prioritize my sister, was suffocating. It was about feeling invisible, like nothing I did for myself would ever matter. I was stuck in this endless cycle of being Emma's caretaker, while everything I cared about seemed secondary. I poured all my frustration into my speech for a school event. I had been chosen to speak, and for the first time in a long time, I felt valued. My parents promised they'd be there to watch, and for the first time in years, I felt like something I did might actually matter. I worked hard on that speech, imagining the pride I'd see in my parents' eyes. But when the time came, they weren't there. They were once again consumed by Emma's needs, and I was left standing on stage, alone. I pushed through the speech, hands shaking, voice wavering, but I couldn't stop the tears. I cried not just for the missed opportunity, but for all the times I had been sidelined. I had worked so hard for this moment, and yet it was always about Emma. Afterward, as I walked home, the weight of it all hit me. I had spent so many years trying to keep it all together, but it was like nothing about me would ever be enough. A few weeks later, my dad and I started talking about college. For the first time, it seemed like the conversation was about my future, not just Emma. But then, he made a joke about me picking a high-paying major so I could take care of her when they were gone. That was the breaking point. All the years of sacrifices, all the times I had been expected to give up my own life for my sister, came rushing to the surface. I exploded. I yelled at my dad, telling him how unfair it was that my entire life was supposed to revolve around Emma. I had dreams, but they seemed irrelevant to him. In the aftermath, I ran to my room, slamming the door behind me. Hours passed, then days, and no one came to check on me. It was as though my outburst didn't matter. I had finally snapped, but nothing changed. It was as if my feelings didn't even register. I wasn't allowed to be upset. I wasn't allowed to need anything. A few days later, I packed a bag and left. I went to my grandpa's house, the one place where I knew I could find peace. I didn't make a plan, just left in the middle of the night, hoping he wouldn't try to stop me. He didn't. He welcomed me with open arms, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Grandpa listened, he supported me, and most importantly, he let me be myself. In the quiet of his home, I started to think about my future. What I wanted, not just what was expected of me. I started looking at colleges again, this time with a sense of possibility. It wasn't just about finding a career that would support my family. It was about choosing something I was passionate about, something that would make me happy. I was starting to find my voice again, starting to realize that I didn't have to live my life in the shadow of my sister's needs. And when Kelly texted me to tell me she was leaving Jacob, moving out with the kids, I felt a sense of relief. She was finally taking control of her life too. But Jacob didn't give up. He called me, furious, blaming me for everything. I listened to him rant, but when he finally stopped, I told him the truth. Maybe this wouldn't have happened if you spent more time as a husband and father and less time gambling. Good luck with that. I hung up, and for the first time, I felt like I had finally set a boundary. Kelly and the kids moved on, and Jacob was left to face the consequences of his actions. I was still in touch with Kelly, supporting her, but I had learned that I didn't have to sacrifice myself anymore. I was allowed to have a future that was mine, and that realization was both freeing and empowering. The love and support from my grandpa had given me the space to reclaim my own life. I had stopped being just a caretaker, and for the first time in years, I was starting to live for myself again. Ever since Emma was born, my life had been overshadowed by a never-ending cycle of responsibilities. I was once excited to become a big sister when I was just 6 years old, but that joy quickly faded as the years passed. The shift was gradual but unmistakable. Suddenly, I was pushed into the basement, far away from my parents, so Emma could be closer to them. The basement was cold and eerie, a far cry from the warmth and closeness I had grown up with. I felt invisible, like I had disappeared from my own family's radar. The basement became my new reality, and nights spent down there felt like an eternity. The rest of the family was upstairs, laughing, enjoying life together, while I was left to feel like a forgotten part of the family. The isolation was crushing. Emma, in her innocence, broke my toys repeatedly. She didn't mean to, but it still hurt. When I tried to speak up, my parents simply brushed it off. "She's younger. She doesn't understand. You're the big sister, you should be more patient." I wanted to scream. It felt like no one cared about my feelings. Those toys were my escape, and seeing them broken without any real consequence made me feel like I didn't matter. It wasn't just about the toys or the basement. The worst part was the constant neglect I felt from my parents. They never seemed to notice how their actions affected me. One incident stood out the most. I had worked hard for a MacBook that my school had given me as a reward for my good grades. Emma destroyed it. My parents were angry, but instead of standing up for me, they blamed me for being careless. The weight of the situation sank in. No one was on my side. It wasn't just about the laptop, it was about feeling completely alone in the middle of my own family. Still, I kept pushing through, being the good sister, trying to balance my life as a student and a caretaker. But over time it wore me down. Emma needed constant attention, and every time I tried to do something for myself, like hanging out with friends or taking a break, I was bombarded with calls from my parents, asking me to drop everything and help. It felt like I was on call 24/7, but no one ever asked how I was doing or what I needed. One day I decided to take a break. I had planned to go see the new Spider-Man movie with my friend Jake. It felt like a huge deal. I hadn't made plans for myself in what felt like forever. I turned off my phone, determined to enjoy the movie without feeling guilty. When the movie ended, I turned my phone back on and was immediately hit with a barrage of texts and missed calls. My heart sank. I called home and my mom picked up, her voice dripping with anger. "Where have you been? We needed you an hour ago." I could barely get a word in before she continued, scolding me for being irresponsible. I rushed home, guilt washing over me, but also a deep-seated anger that no one seemed to understand. When I arrived, my parents were furious. "We rely on you," my dad snapped. "And you just disappear to watch a movie?" Their disappointment hung heavy in the air. My sister's needs were always put before mine, and no matter how hard I tried to explain that I needed a break, it fell on deaf ears. "Your responsibilities here are more important than a movie," my mom added. I was grounded, all because I wanted to have one moment of peace, one small moment of normalcy. It wasn't just about the movie, it was about feeling trapped in a life I didn't choose. I had no space to breathe, no time for myself. Being 18 and constantly being expected to prioritize Emma's needs over my own was suffocating. My parents didn't seem to care about my aspirations, my wants, my future. They saw me as nothing more than a caretaker, a role I never asked for but was expected to fill indefinitely. The tipping point came when I was talking to my dad about colleges. I had been looking forward to it, feeling hopeful for once that I could focus on my future. But then my dad casually joked about me picking a high-paying major so I could take care of Emma when they were gone. That comment shattered everything. It was as if he didn't see me as a person with my own dreams, but merely as someone who would take care of Emma forever. I snapped. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I screamed at him, telling him how unfair it was that my life was expected to revolve around Emma. I had given up so much, and no one seemed to care. I ran to my room, slamming the door behind me, but no one came to check on me, no one apologized. The reality set in. I had been used, manipulated, and my feelings didn't matter. After hours of silence, I decided to leave. I packed my things and went to stay with my grandpa, the one person who had always been there for me. He didn't try to fix things or lecture me, he just listened. For the first time in ages, I felt like I could breathe. Grandpa was the first person to make me realize that I didn't have to live my life trapped in a role I never chose. He encouraged me to focus on myself, to reclaim the parts of my life I had lost. I started thinking about college again, not as a means to escape, but as an opportunity to build a future for myself. I wasn't just going to be a caretaker, I was going to be me. As time passed, I began to see the support from my extended family, especially my aunts and uncles. They checked in on me, listened to my frustrations, and made me feel seen. They were upset with my parents for lying about Emma's care, for pretending to have a caregiver when they didn't. That betrayal, that lie, had hurt everyone, and it made me feel less alone. For the first time in a long while, I was just me. Not the caretaker, not the sister, just me. When my parents finally tried to talk to me, it was more of the same. They admitted to some of their mistakes, but they still insisted that my purpose in life was to care for Emma. They didn't apologize, they just made excuses. That conversation confirmed what I already knew. They would never see me as anything more than a caretaker. So, I made the decision to move out permanently. I was done. Grandpa and my uncle helped me pack up my things, and with their support, I left. The hardest part was saying goodbye to my mom. She finally told me she loved me, that she would miss me. It was the first time in years I had heard those words from her, and it hit me hard. But it wasn't enough. I couldn't go back to a life where my needs were never considered. Living with Grandpa has been a fresh start. For the first time in years, I felt like I had control over my life. I've started to think about my future, my dreams, and what I want. I'm not just a caretaker anymore. I'm a person, and I'm ready to live for myself. My parents may never understand, but I'm finally okay with that. I've got my future to look forward to, and I'm no longer burdened by the past. It's been a tough journey, but it's one I'm ready to continue on my own terms. This story teaches us the importance of self-care, setting boundaries, and recognizing when we are being taken advantage of, even by those we love. The protagonist spent years feeling invisible, as her needs and desires were constantly overshadowed by her sister's needs, and her role as a caregiver became her entire identity. The key lesson here is that it's okay to prioritize ourselves, even when family expectations and responsibilities weigh us down. It's a reminder that while it's noble to care for others, it should never come at the cost of our own well-being. For the elderly, this message is especially important, as it highlights the need for personal space, emotional support, and respect in relationships. It's vital to recognize when sacrifices are no longer healthy and to take steps to reclaim our lives. The protagonist's decision to move away and live with her grandpa represents a powerful moment of independence, where she finally chose to live for herself and not just for others. This can be a powerful lesson for older generations who may have spent their lives caregiving, It's okay to redefine one's purpose, set boundaries, and create space for personal fulfillment. Ultimately, this story reminds us that our own happiness and well-being are just as important as those we love, and sometimes, stepping away from unhealthy dynamics can be the first step toward healing and self-discovery. Thank you so much for watching. If you found value in this video, please comment one below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more content like this. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends or anyone who might benefit. And I'd love to know how you feel about the video, so feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means everything to me, and I can't wait to see you in the next one.